For nearly a century, one of history's most haunting mysteries lay buried beneath the frozen soil of Russia. The fate of the Romanovs, the last royal family of a fallen empire, was not just a question of history. It was a modern myth, shrouded in rumor, conspiracy, and whispers of miraculous survival. Then, science unlocked a tomb of secrets. A story long thought lost to bullets and lies was pieced together, not from diaries, but from DNA. And what it revealed was more complex, more brutal, and more definitive than anyone had ever imagined. This wasn't just the story of a royal family's disappearance. It was the forensic reconstruction of the final, violent chapter of a 300-year-old dynasty. Our story begins in the heart of a revolution. On a humid July night in 1918, in the city of Yekaterinburg, a dark deed was done in the basement of a merchant's house. Confiscated by the Bolsheviks, it was grimly renamed the House of Special Purpose. Inside, Tsar Nicholas II, the last emperor of Russia, stood with his family. At his side was his wife, Tsarina Alexandra, and their 5 children, the Grand Duchesses Olga, Tatiana, Maria, Anastasia, and their only son, the frail heir, Tsarevich Alexei. The Russian Revolution had torn their world apart. Held captive for months, the family was now a liability to the new Bolshevik regime. That night, they were woken and told to dress, ordered to the cellar for their safety during supposed street fighting. Nicholas, ever the father, carried the 13-year-old Alexei, whose hemophilia left him too weak to walk. They were joined by 4 loyal attendants who had refused to abandon them: their physician, Dr. Yevgeny Botkin, the Tsarina's maid, Anna Demidova, and 2 other faithful servants, Ivan Karatonov and Alexei Trupp. In the stark, empty room, a death sentence was read aloud. Before the family could fully comprehend the words, a volley of gunfire erupted. In a chaotic storm of bullets and smoke, 11 lives were extinguished. The official story, when it finally trickled out, was that only the Tsar had been executed. His family, they claimed, had been moved to a secure location. It was a lie, designed to quell public outrage, a lie that would fester for decades.
The real challenge for the executioners had just begun. They now had 11 bodies and a command to make them disappear forever. Their plan was a frantic, desperate improvisation. The bodies were loaded onto a truck and driven into the Koptyaki forest. Their first idea, to dump them down a flooded mine shaft called the Four Brothers Mine, failed. The shaft was too shallow. Panicked, they retrieved the bodies, attempting to destroy them with sulfuric acid and fire. But a complete cremation in the middle of a forest was impossible. As dawn approached, with evidence of their crimes still visible, they resorted to a final, crude solution. They dug a shallow pit on a muddy cart track, burying 9 of the victims. Then, in a calculated move to confuse any future discovery, they took the remaining 2 bodies, those of the youngest children, and buried them in a separate, smaller grave about 70 meters away after a more brutal attempt at incineration. The men swore an oath of secrecy. For 60 years, the forest kept it. While the world speculated, imposters emerged. Dozens of women came forward claiming to be the Grand Duchess Anastasia, the most famous being Anna Anderson, whose case captivated the public for decades. The Romanov myth was alive, but the truth lay silent, waiting for a different kind of investigator. In the 1970s, within the oppressive climate of the Soviet Union, a geologist named Alexander Avdonin developed a dangerous obsession. Poring over secret documents and clandestine testimonies, he pieced together the executioner's trail. In 1979, guided by these historical breadcrumbs, he and a filmmaker friend, Jayli Ryabov, secretly unearthed the main grave. Staring down at a tangle of bones, they knew they had found the Romanovs. But to reveal their discovery in Soviet Russia would mean a prison sentence, or worse. They reburied the remains, taking only a few skulls for private study, and held their secret for another 12 years. The moment came in 1991, with the collapse of the Soviet Union. Avdonin finally led Russian authorities back to the muddy clearing. The official exhumation unearthed 9 skeletons, confirming his discovery. Initial forensic analysis suggested they were the Tsar, the Tsarina, 3 of their daughters, and their 4 servants. But this confirmation only deepened the mystery. 9 skeletons, not 11. The Tsarevich Alexei and one of his sisters were missing. This gap in the grave reignited the legends of survival. Had 2 children escaped the slaughter? The scientific community was also divided. Russian experts, examining the skeletal remains, believed the missing daughter was Maria. American scientists, studying the same evidence, argued it was Anastasia. The world's most famous cold case was far from closed. This is where the story pivots from history to forensics, from shovels in the dirt to the sterile quiet of a DNA laboratory. The bones were degraded, damaged by acid, and 73 years in a hostile environment. Traditional identification was not enough. The case called for a revolutionary tool, DNA analysis. Dr. Peter Gill in the UK and Dr. Pavel Ivanov in Russia spearheaded the effort. They faced immense challenges. The DNA was fragmented, and the risk of contamination from modern DNA was extreme. Their first task was to establish the family relationships within the grave. By analyzing mitochondrial DNA genetic material passed down exclusively from mother to child, they confirmed that the Tsarina was the mother of the 3 daughters found with her. To confirm the Tsarina's identity beyond doubt, they needed a living relative. They found one in Prince Philip, Duke of Edinburgh, the husband of Queen Elizabeth II. His maternal grandmother was the Tsarina Alexandra's sister. Prince Philip provided a blood sample. The result was a perfect mitochondrial DNA match. The skeleton was unequivocally Tsarina Alexandra. Identifying the Tsar proved more complex. When they sequenced his DNA, they discovered a rare genetic anomaly known as heteroplasmy, 2 different mitochondrial DNA sequences coexisting in the same person. It was so unusual that it cast doubt on the entire finding. To validate it, they needed a confirmed sample of Nicholas's DNA. The solution was extraordinary. Russian authorities exhumed the body of the Tsar's deceased brother, Grand Duke George Alexandrovich. When scientists tested his remains, they found the exact same rare heteroplasmy. It was the genetic smoking gun. The skeleton was Tsar Nicholas II. The science had proven the identities of the parents and 3 of their children. But the mystery of the 2 missing children haunted investigators. For years, search parties combed the forest. Then, in the summer of 2007, a group of amateur local historians, following a trail from old reports, made the breakthrough. About 70 meters from the main grave, in a clearing known as Pig's Meadow, their shovels struck bone. What they found was not a grave of skeletons, but a collection of 44 charred, shattered bone fragments and teeth. The damage was severe, consistent with the historical account of the executioner's frantic attempts to destroy the last 2 bodies with fire and acid. Among the fragments, archaeologists found 3 silver dental fillings, a sign of wealth in 1918. Preliminary analysis suggested the fragments belonged to a boy aged 12 to 15 and a young woman aged 15 to 19. The ages perfectly matched Alexei and one of his sisters. The fragments were sent to 2 of the world's leading laboratories, the U.S. Armed Forces DNA Identification Laboratory and Austria's Institute of Legal Medicine. The task was monumental. The DNA was even more degraded than the 1991 samples. Using the most advanced techniques, scientists painstakingly extracted tiny amounts of genetic material. First, they tested the mitochondrial DNA. The results were immediate and astounding. The DNA sequences from both sets of fragments matched the Tsarina Alexandra, confirming they were her children. But the final, irrefutable proof came from nuclear DNA, which is inherited from both parents. By comparing the nuclear DNA profiles from the fragments to those of Tsar Nicholas and Tsarina Alexandra from the first grave, scientists constructed a complete family tree. The computer models confirmed it with absolute certainty. These fragments belonged to the son and a daughter of the couple in the main grave. All 7 Romanovs were accounted for. The DNA had solved the 90-year-old mystery, but there was one last secret the DNA held. It could finally settle the academic dispute over which daughter had been missing. By mapping the full genetic profiles of all 4 daughters, scientists delivered the final verdict. The 3 daughters in the main grave were Olga, Tatiana, and Anastasia. The remains in the second grave belonged to Tsarevich Alexei and the Grand Duchess Maria. The enduring myth of Anastasia's survival, a story that had inspired books, plays, and films, was definitively proven false. The science was unassailable. The impact of this discovery was profound. In 2000, the Russian Orthodox Church had declared the family saints. The complete identification of their remains brought a solemn closure to their story. For science, the Romanov case became a landmark achievement, pioneering techniques that would be used to identify victims of war, disaster, and disease around the world. Today, the remains of all 11 victims from that basement in Yekaterinburg rest together in a cathedral in St. Petersburg. The mystery that captivated the world for nearly a century is finally solved. The truth was not found in whispered rumors or the claims of impostors. It was written in the silent, incorruptible code of life itself, waiting patiently in the dark earth for science to finally learn how to read it.